everyone and welcome to my kitchen. Today we're going to make one of the most famous English dessert in the world, the apple crumble tart. This dessert was made for the first time before the Second World War, when England introduced the cutting of the food resources because of the beginning of the war. Each family could only have a limited amount of resources, so people started to mix everything that they had in their home. The most simple ingredients like flour, sugar and just a little bit of butter. Butter was too expensive. Because of the high cost of the food, even white flour sometimes was substituted by oat flakes or all the bread crumbs. The English gardens were full of apple trees, and so the apples were peeled, chopped and they laid over a baking tray with the crumbles on top, which combined to the crunchiness of the crumbles made an amazing dessert. From the 50s and the 60s, this cake became a very traditional British comfort food. Let's look at the ingredients list. First of all, we'll start by mixing into a planetary mixer with the flat attachment, our cold butter and the brown sugar together. We will also add the vanilla extract. You can find a link to my vanilla homemade extract in the description, and then we will mix everything on a medium speed for a couple of minutes until everything is well combined. After a couple of minutes, we will scrape the side of the mixing bowl. I'll add the salt as well, and then mix for another minute to well combine it. We will prepare now our dry ingredients. So in a bowl we will mix the self-raising flour, the oat flakes and the desiccated coconut milk. Then I'll mix everything with a whisk to well combine everything. On a low speed now we will put the dry ingredients all at once. Once we see that the flour has all been incorporated, then we can take the crumbles out of the mixing bowl. Our crumbles are nice and ready. I've put them into a bowl and now I will let them rest in the fridge for at least an hour until they become hard and they are ready to be baked. Once my crumbles are resting and setting in the fridge, I will start peeling and chopping the apples. You can choose any type of apples you like. I prefer the red ones. My apples are now peeled. I'll cut them in the middle, take the nut off and we'll chop them. I want to chop my apples into dices of a 1.5 centimeters thickness maximum. Once my apples have been chopped, I will pour in straight away the lemon juice to avoid of them turning black. I'll give a mix to them. I will also add my ground cinnamon and mix again. I find that apples really go really well with cinnamon. Eccoci qua! Once my apples are ready to go, now it's time to cook them and caramelize them. So what I'll do first, I'll make a dry caramel with the sugar and then add the apples into it. It's very important that when you make the dry caramel, you add the sugar a little bit at a time and wait for that addition to fully melt. Once we see that the sugar has been turning into an amber brown caramel, then we can add the apples straight in. And then you can add the hot apple juice inside. What I really like to do is keeping an extra saucepan on the side to keep my apple juice hot so that I can start adding it once my caramel and the apples are cooking. My apples are now simmering with the juice and I'll add now in the jam setting sugar and put it back on the stove and cook it until it becomes more dense and more like a jam. Here they are, my apples are very nice and ready and they smell amazing. Great, now I'll put them into a bowl and let them cool down completely. Hello, hello, apple, my lady, apple and crumble for you. My crumbles are now ready to be baked, so I'll spread them over the top of a baking tray covered with baking paper, and I'll distribute them a little bit separate from each other, so when they cook they don't stick to each other. If you don't want crumbles too big, you can also break them with your fingertips. So I'll bake them for about 20 to 25 minutes at 150 degrees Celsius in a fan-forced oven or 175 degrees in a static oven, and every 10 minutes I'll flip them and move them with the help of a metal spatula. My crumbles have just come out of the oven. They smell and they taste incredibly. So now what I'll do, I'll leave them on the side and let them cool down completely. It's now time to roll my short crust pastry to make my tartlet shells, and you will find the recipe link in the description. I roll now the pastry till about 3.5 millimeters thickness. Apple and crumble. Fantastico! Once I've rolled out my pastry, with the round-shaped cookie cutter, I'll cut pieces of dough. I'll now start covering my tartlet molds with the pieces of dough I've cut before. When I do this step, it's really important to make sure that I let the dough sit properly at the bottom of the mold, but also on the side. To do that, you have to actually push a little bit by using your fingertips. Fantastico! Our tartlet shells are now ready, but before baking them, I'll let them rest into the fridge for at least 2 hours. Here they are, my very nice and cold tartlet shells ready to be baked. I'll bake them at 150 degrees Celsius in a fan-forced oven for 15 minutes or into a static oven at 170 degrees Celsius for 20 minutes.
So once my tartlet shells have come out of the oven, I had to let them cool down completely before filling them in. So now I'm ready to fill them and serve them. Now fill them in with the vanilla crème pâtissier, which you'll find the link to the recipe in the description. Then I will put my caramelized apples on the top. And then I'll finish it with some nice, tasty and crunchy crumbles, everyone. Here it is. My apple crumble is finally finished, and I can just leave it like that, or I can serve it by dusting a little bit of icing sugar on top. From Rocco the Singlish Chef, it's all for today. A big kiss to everyone and ciao!
See you next week at our usual appointment at 6 p.m. on Wednesday to learn very new exciting recipes.